Welcome to Thoughts on the Market. I'm Tim Chan, Morgan Stanley's Head of Asia Sustainability Research.
And I'm Mayank Maheshwari, the Energy Analyst for India and Southeast Asia.
Today, a major shift in global energy. We are talking about nuclear power, gas adoption, and what the future holds. It's Monday, August 18 at 8 a.m. in Hong Kong.
And it's 8 a.m. in Singapore.
Nuclear power is no longer niche, it's a mega trend. It was once seen as controversial and capital intensive, but now nuclear power is stepping into the spotlight, not just for decarbonization, but for energy security. Global investment projections in these sectors are now topping more than $2 trillion by 2050. This is fueled by growing appetite from major tech companies for clean, reliable 24/7 energy. More specifically, Asia is emerging at the epicenter of capacity growth, and that's where your coverage comes in, Mayank. With the rising consumption of electricity, how does nuclear energy adoption stack up in your universe?
Tim, it's a fascinating world on power right now that we are seeing. Now, the tight global power markets perspective is key on why there is so much investor and policymaker attention to nuclear power. Nuclear fuels accounted for about a tenth of the power units produced globally. However, they are almost a fifth of the global clean power generation. Now, power consumption is at another tripping point, and this is after tripling since 1980s. To give you a perspective, Tim, 25 trillion units of power were consumed worldwide last year. And we see this growing rapidly at a 25% pace in the next 5 years or so. And if you look at consumption growth outside of China, it's even faster at 2.5x for the rest of the decade when compared to the last decade. Now, policymakers need energy security, and hence nuclear is getting a lot more attention. In Asia, while China, Korea, and Japan have been using nuclear energy to power the economy, the rest of Asia, it has been more an ambition, with India being the only country making progress last decade. Southeast Asia still has a lot more coal, and nuclear remains an ambition, as technology acceptance by public and regulatory framework remains a key handicap. We do, however, see policymakers in Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia looking at nuclear fuels more seriously now, with SMRs also being discussed.
That is a really interesting perspective, Mayank. So you have been bullish on the Asia gas adoption story. So how do you think gas and nuclear will intersect in this region?
I think nuclear and natural gas, like all other fuels, Tim, will complement each other. However, the long gestation to put nuclear capacity makes gas a viable alternative for energy security. As I was telling you earlier, policymakers are definitely focusing on it. As you know, the last big increase in focus in nuclear fuels also happened in the 1970s oil shock, again when energy security came into play. Global natural gas consumption has more than doubled in the last 3 decades and is set to surprise again, with Asia-Pac's consumption pretty much set to rise at twice the pace versus what right now expectations are by the street. In this age of electrification and AI adoption, natural gas is definitely emerging as a dependable and an affordable fuel of the future to power everything from automobiles to humanoids, biogenetics to AI data centers, and even semiconductor production, which is getting so much focus nowadays. We expect global consumption to rise again after not growing this decade for natural gas, as Asia's natural gas adoption rises and grows at 5% CAGR 2024 to 2030, with consumption for gas surprising in China, India, and Japan. So all the large economies are seeing this big increases, especially versus expectations. The region will consume 70% of the globally traded natural gas by 2030. So that's how important Asia will be for the world. And while global gas glut is well flagged, especially coming out of the US, Asia's ability to absorb this glut is not very well appreciated. Tim, having said that, nuclear energy is clearly getting more interest globally and is often debated in sustainability circles. How do you see its role evolving in sustainability frameworks as well as green taxonomies?
On sustainability, one thing to talk about is exclusion. That is really important for many sustainability investors. And when it comes to exclusion for nuclear power, only 2.3% of global AUM now exclude nuclear power. And then that percentage is lower than alcohol, military contracting, and gambling. And the exclusion rate is also different depending on the region. Right now, European investors have the highest exclusion rate, but have reduced the nuclear exclusion from 10.9% to 8.4% as of December last year. And North American and Asian exclusion rate are very, very low, just 0.3% and 0.6% respectively. So these exclusion in North American and Asian are minimal. The World Bank has also lifted its decades-long ban on financing nuclear projects, which is important because World Bank can provide capital to fund the early stage of nuclear plant project or construction. And finally, on green finance, the EU, China, and Japan have incorporated the nuclear power into their green taxonomies. So that means in some circumstances, nuclear project can be considered as green.
Now, we have talked about AI and its need for power on this show. Nuclear power has a significant role to play in that equation, with hyperscalers paying premium for nuclear power. How does this support the investment case for nuclear utilities?
Yeah, so that depends on the region, and then different region will have different dilemmas. So let's talk about US first. In the US, we are seeing nuclear power is commanding a premium of approximately around $30 to $50 per megawatt hour above the market rate. So when it comes to this price premium, we do think that will support the nuclear utilities in the US. And then in the report, we highlighted a few names that we believe the current stock price haven't really priced in this premium in the market. And then for other region, it depends on the region as well. So Mayank, you have talked about Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia right now, given the lack of nuclear pipeline and then also the favorable economics of gas, we are not seeing that sort of premium yet in the Southeast Asia. We are also not seeing that premium in the Europe and in China as well, given that right now this sort of premium is mainly a US exclusive situation. So depending on the region, we are seeing different opportunities for nuclear utilities when it comes to the price premium.
Definitely, Tim. I think the price premiums are dependent on how tight these power markets in each of the geographies are. But how does nuclear fit into broader energy mix alongside renewables and natural gas for you?
So all these are really important for nuclear power. Investors really appreciate the clean and reliable and for the 24/7 nature of the energy supply to support their operations and sustainability goals. And then nuclear is also important to bring the power additionality, which means nuclear is bringing truly new energy generation rather than simply utilizing existing or already planned capacity. We are seeing that sort of additionality in the new nuclear project and also the SMR in future as well. So for natural gas, that is also important. As Mayank, you have mentioned, natural gas mainly act as a bridge fuel to provide flexibility to the grid. And then in the US, it is currently the primary near-term solution for powering AI and data center to increase the electricity supply due to its speed to the market and reliability. And natural gas is expected to meet immediate demand while longer-term solutions like nuclear projects and also SMR are developed. And finally, renewable energy is also important. It represents the fastest growing and increasingly cost-competitive energy source. They also dominate the new capacity additions as well. But for renewable energy, it also requires complementary technology such as battery, ESS to address the intermittency issues. So Mayank, we have talked so much about nuclear, and back to you on natural gas. You are really bullish on natural gas. So how and where do you think are the best way to play it?
As you were kind of talking about the intersection and diffusion between nuclear, natural gas, and the renewable markets, what you're seeing is that our bullishness on consumption of natural gas is basically all about how this diffusion plays out. Consumption of natural gas will rise much quicker than most fuels for the rest of the decade if you think about numbers, making it more than just a transition fuel. Hence, Morgan Stanley Research has a list of 75 equities globally to play the thematic of this diffusion, and it is happening in the power markets. These equities are part of the natural gas adoption and the powering AI thematic as well. So these include the equipment producers on power, the gas pipeline players who are basically supporting the supply of natural gas to some of these power plants, hybrid power generation companies which have a good mix of renewables, natural gas, a bit of nuclear sometimes, and infrastructure providers for energy security. So all these 75 stocks are effectively playing at the intersection of all these three thematics that we are talking about as Morgan Stanley research. It's clear that nuclear renaissance STEM isn't just about reactors, it's about rethinking energy systems, sustainability, and geopolitics.
Yes, and the next decade will be defined by how we balance ambition with execution. Nuclear, together with gas and renewables, will be central to Asia's energy future. Mayank, thanks for taking the time to talk.
Great speaking to you, Tim.
And thanks for listening. If you enjoy Thoughts on the Market, please leave us a review wherever you listen and share the podcast with a friend or colleague today.
The preceding content is informational only and based on information available when created. It is not an offer or solicitation, nor is it tax or legal advice. It does not consider your financial circumstances and objectives and may not be suitable for you.